Good morning. Welcome back to Morning Brew. Hey, end of the week. It's Friday. Well, if you're watching on Friday, it's Friday. I mean, you could be watching Saturday, Sunday, but whatever. For me, it's the end of the week, right? For you, it's the end of the week. Welcome back to Morning Brew. Hope you've been checking in. We've been having some awesome chats. Brent's been doing some amazing Bible studies Monday through Thursday. And this Passion Week series we're on leading up to Easter has just been challenging. So this Sunday, 8 and 9:30, or you can come face-to-face, see it live, or you can check us out online. We'll be holding service at 8 and 9:30, and then 11 o'clock is face-to-face only. So, hey, if you don't have somewhere to be, you don't have a church to attend, come on out to Lake Eustis Christian Church. Oh, and by the way, I'm Scott Brunsman. I'm one of the elders at Lake Eustis Christian, and you'll see my face often here in Morning Brew, and I got a couple others that help me out. Rebecca, she's got some awesome words if you go back and look some previous editions of it. But this week, I want to go back in the book of Genesis. I've been listening to this podcast, and there's a scripture reference used in Genesis that really started making the wheels in my mind turn. And when that happens, watch out. Lots of smoke detectors flying everywhere. But it's Genesis chapter 4. And it's in the scripture in Genesis chapter 4 is talking about Cain and Abel and the sacrifice that they made to God. If you read that, when you read it, you'll see that God was pleased with what Abel brought, but God was displeased with what Cain brought. The reason being is when Abel came to God and offered him a sacrifice, when he presented the offerings, it was the best he had. He didn't hold back from God. He wasn't selective. He wasn't picky about what part of him he's presenting. He presented the best he had. Cain, on the other hand, when he presented his, it wasn't his first fruits. It wasn't his best. It was just something he had. Maybe even leftovers, right? Not the best. And so we move into the scripture, and you see that Cain becomes pretty upset that God tells Abel how pleased he is with Abel's offering, but displeased with Cain. And then let's start with verse 6. It's verse 7 I want to focus on, but verse 6 says, "Then the Lord said to Cain, 'Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast?' And in verse 7, 'If you do what is right, will you not be accepted?'" He's asking him this question. "But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." So I'm reading that, and I'm going, wow. I mean, that one sentence right there carries a ton of a depth to it, a ton of insight. So first of all, Cain, if you think about the root of what he did, one of the things that he committed was greed. I mean, he wanted to hold back for himself. He didn't want to give everything to God. He just wanted to give a part of what he had to God. So he was already, there's sin in his heart, and he's being selfish about his actions. And so when you look at that scripture, and God says, "But if you do what is right, if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door," he's telling Cain, look, the more you hold back, the more you hold back yourself, the more you think selfishly, the more you act for yourself, the more you're allowing sin into your life. And the more you let sin into your life, the harder it is to keep it out, right? Well, if you read on in chapter 4, Cain ends up murdering Abel, right? He ends up killing him. That greed becomes so powerful and such a stronghold in his life. He just can't accept the fact that of Abel and who Abel is and what Abel did, and the fact that how he felt Abel made him look, which in fact was how Cain made himself look, but he still put the blame on Abel. But the part that I kept keying in on is the fact that sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. How many times in our life, I mean, not even our life, how often do we rationalize sin in our life? How often do we minimize sin that we face in our life? How often do we see sin and we just think it's not that big of a deal? Or we just kind of, again, we minimize it. We make it smaller, right? We try to make it smaller. But read in Genesis 4:7, but if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. It's, the sin we're surrounded by is powerful if we give it power. Powerful in the sense that when we enable sin, when we enable the things in our life that tempt us, that we shouldn't let in our life, we're empowering them. It's not that Satan has any power over us. We empower. We empower by our actions. We empower by what we think. We empower by how we act on what we think, right? I mean, I can't say how many times during the day I may have a impure thought, an evil thought. Do I act on that thought? What do I do with that thought? Do I minimize it and make it as though it's nothing? Or do I truly give it to God, and do I step away from it and get as far away from it as from the east is from the west, right? And one scripture that I found that I thought was very powerful and it's in James, and it's 1:13. And it says, when tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. So it's this idea that we enable sin in our life. It's not like it has any power over you. It doesn't. It only has the power that you give it. Well, then, if it only has the power that I give it, then how do I take away this power? How do I avoid enabling sin in my life? And how we avoid enabling sin in our life is when we look at Colossians. Let's see. When you look at Colossians, it says in chapter 3, it says, since then you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on the things above and not on earthly things, for you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you will also appear with him in glory. And then Paul says, put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature. So how do we not empower sin in our life? How do we not enable sin in our life? Put to death. Destroy it. Get rid of it. It doesn't say compartmentalize it. It doesn't say put it in a drawer somewhere so you can get back out later. It says put to death. If I find an area in my life where I struggle, the only way to not empower the sin in that area in my life that I may struggle is to put it to death, to put my mind on things above, to focus on things above. Paul lists all sorts of things: filthy language from your mouth. Rid yourselves of such things as anger, rage, malice, slander. Do not lie to each other. These are when God talks about in Genesis, do what is right, because sin's crouching at your door, right? Because sin's just waiting to jump on opportunities to get into your life, to be empowered. And it says, therefore, right? Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. So Paul's talking about, listen, put the things in your mind and in your heart that will encourage and edify and strengthen you spiritually. So I submit to you that we stop enabling the sin in our life. And how we stop enabling the sin in our life is we recognize that sin is empowered by us. And how do we take away the power of sin in our life? By feeding our spirit with the things of God, feeding our spirit with the word, feeding our spirit with patience and kindness, humility and gentleness, by feeding our spirit with prayer, by focusing on things above. right? Doesn't mean you can't watch your favorite sports team. Doesn't mean you can't go out and enjoy yourself. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy your family and do things. But in doing what you do daily, let your focus be on him above. Let your life, let every step you take be a deliberate step in righteousness, seeking him. And let's take a stronger stand against sin in our lives. Let's not enable and empower the sin in our life. Let's like God said to Cain, do what is right. Look, understand that the devil is sitting there crouching, waiting. Sin is sitting there crouching, ready to be empowered by you, be empowered by me, by what I think and how I act and what I do. Well, if I don't feed it, I'm going to put it to death because it's going to starve. So I just encourage you today, listen, check out again, James chapter 1, Colossians chapter 3, and just just read that story of Cain and Abel and just see what it says to you, how it ministers to you. It's in Genesis chapter 4. And just see how God speaks to you. But listen, as Christians, as children of God, who have a passion and desire to just be closer to him, let's disable sin in our life. Let's put it to death, right? So I want to thank you all for joining me for Morning Brew. Have an amazing weekend. Again, we got church this Sunday. If you don't have a place to worship, if you do have a place to worship, listen, I just encourage you to get more plugged in. Just start putting God more into your life. Putting God more into your life so you can be encouraged and empowered to minister and reach those around you in your workplace, in your school, wherever it may be. So thanks for joining. God bless, and see you next week.